The champagne glass shattered against Italian marble, and 200 guests fell silent. Amora Okoye stood at the center of the engagement party that was supposed to crown her fairy tale, except the fairy tale had just shown its teeth. The projection screen behind her, meant to display a montage of her love story with Deo, instead played a hotel security feed. Her fiancé, her best friend Chidera, tangled together in a bed paid for with Amora's credit card. The room watched. Nobody breathed. Amora didn't scream. Didn't cry. She turned slowly, her collarbone tattoo, an intricate pattern of thorns wrapping a cracked crown, catching the chandelier light. She looked at Deo. She looked at Chidera. Then she looked at the stranger standing near the service entrance. A quiet Korean man in a catering uniform, holding a tray of empty glasses, watching her with eyes that held no pity. Only stillness. "You," Amora said. The room shifted. "Marry me." Sometimes the decisions that destroy us feel exactly like the ones that save us. Sometimes we run from fire straight into something we cannot name, something quieter, deeper, and far more dangerous than anything we've ever known. If this story moves you, please like, share, and subscribe. 12 hours earlier, Amora Okoye had been the most envied woman in Lagos. The penthouse suite at the Eco-Atlantic residences gleamed with the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Atlantic Ocean, its black water churning beneath a moonless sky. Amora stood before the bathroom mirror in a silk robe, pressing her fingers against her collarbone tattoo, the thorned crown she'd gotten after surviving her mother's death 5 years ago. A reminder. She survived everything. Her phone buzzed. "Chidera. Bestie, tonight is your night. The queen gets her king. I'm so happy I could cry. 2 hearts. Amora smiled. Typed back, "I couldn't have done this without you, Kai, you're my person." She set the phone down and studied her reflection. 33 years old. Sharp cheekbones inherited from her Igbo mother. Skin the color of burnished bronze. Eyes that people called intense when they meant intimidating. She'd built Okoye Designs from nothing, a fashion empire that dressed senators' wives and Nollywood royalty. She owned this penthouse. She owned her life. Tonight, Deo Adeyemi, tech entrepreneur, Lagos Bachelor of the Year, her partner for 3 years, would stand beside her and announce their engagement to the world. Everything was perfect. Everything was a lie. The grand ballroom of the Lagos Continental Hotel had been transformed into an Eden of white orchids and gold leaf. 200 guests, politicians, socialites, business magnates, mingled beneath crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. Amora arrived in a custom emerald gown that hugged her frame like water over stone. The tattoo on her collarbone peaked above the neckline, deliberate and unapologetic. Cameras flashed. People whispered her name like a prayer. "Amora. Over here." Stunning, absolutely stunning. "Where's Deo?" She scanned the room. Found Chidera first, her best friend since university, draped in gold, smiling too wide. Something flickered behind Chidera's eyes. Something Amora was too happy to name. "You look incredible," Chidera said, gripping Amora's hands. Her fingers were cold. "So do you." Amora squeezed back. "Where's Deo?" "He's coming. Said he had a surprise." Amora laughed. That man and his surprises. She didn't know. She couldn't have known. That the surprise wasn't coming from Deo at all. The evening unfolded like a choreographed dream. Toasts were raised. Music swelled. Amora floated through conversations with the practiced grace of a woman who'd learned to perform confidence long before she'd actually felt it. At 9:47 p.m., the event coordinator approached the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special presentation, a love story in photographs, curated by the couple themselves." Amora turned to the screen, champagne in hand, heart full. The first image appeared, Amora and Deo on their first vacation. Santorini. She remembered the sunburn, the laughter. The second image, their first Christmas together. She'd cooked jollof rice and he'd burned the plantain and they'd ordered Chinese food at midnight. The third image was not theirs. It was a hotel room. Security camera footage. Grainy but unmistakable. A bed. 2 bodies. Dayo's face turning toward the camera with closed eyes. And beneath him, the gold dress now recognizable, Chidera. The timestamp read, 3 days ago. The room went cold. Someone gasped. Then someone else. Then the silence became its own sound, a living, breathing thing that pressed against Amora's chest like hands trying to crush her ribs. She heard the champagne glass shatter before she realized she'd dropped it. The footage played for 11 seconds before someone cut it. 11 seconds was enough. 11 seconds was a lifetime. Amora stood motionless. The emerald gown suddenly felt like a costume. The chandelier light felt like a spotlight in an interrogation room. 200 faces stared at her, and in every pair of eyes she saw the same thing, pity. She hated pity more than she hated betrayal. Amora, Dayo's voice came from her left. He was pushing through the crowd, his face ashen. Amora, listen to me, that wasn't. Wasn't what? Her voice came out flat. Surgical. The voice of a woman who'd decided, in the space of a heartbeat, that she would not break in front of these people. Wasn't you. Wasn't her. Wasn't my hotel room that I paid for in Abuja. Someone hacked the presentation. This is sabotage. I would never. Dayo. She turned to face him fully. The tattoo on her collarbone seemed to darken under the light. Don't. Chidera hadn't moved from her spot near the bar. Her gold dress caught the light like a blade. Her lips were parted, but no sound came. No denial. No apology. Just the frozen face of a woman who'd been caught and hadn't prepared a mask. Amora looked at her. The friendship, 15 years of shared secrets, of holding each other through heartbreak and triumph, of calling each other sister and meaning it, unraveled in a single look. How long? Amora asked. Chidera's mouth moved. Nothing came out. How long? The room flinched. 8 months, Chidera whispered. 8 months. Amora did the math. 8 months ago, she'd been in Milan for Fashion Week. She'd called Chidera every night. She'd called Dayo every morning. They'd both answered. They'd both said, I miss you. They'd both been in the same bed. Something cracked inside her. Not dramatically. Not loudly. It cracked the way foundations crack, invisibly, irreversibly, deep beneath the surface where no one can see. The murmuring started. Phones appeared. Within minutes, the footage would be on every blog, every WhatsApp group, every gossip page in Nigeria. By morning, Amora Okoye's humiliation would be national entertainment. She knew this. She understood this with the cold clarity of a woman whose business depended on public perception. She could leave. Walk out. Issue a statement in the morning. Control the narrative. Instead, something else happened. She turned toward the service entrance. The catering staff had frozen like everyone else, trays suspended mid-air, eyes wide. All except one. A man. Korean. Late 30s. Lean, not tall. Wearing the standard black and white catering uniform. His hair was slightly too long, falling across his forehead in a way that looked less unkempt and more deliberate. He held a tray of empty champagne flutes with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But his eyes were not the eyes of a waiter. They were calm. Unnervingly calm. Fixed on her with an expression she couldn't read. Not pity, not curiosity, not attraction. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. As if he'd seen this exact scene before, in another life, in another room, and he already knew how it would end. Amora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. You, she said. The room shifted. The man didn't flinch. Didn't look around to see if she meant someone else. He simply lowered the tray and met her gaze with steady, dark eyes. Marry me, Amora said. 200 people stopped breathing. Dayo laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. Amora, you've lost your mind. She didn't look at Dayo. She kept her eyes on the stranger. I said, marry me. The Korean man studied her. 3 seconds. 5. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then he set the tray on the nearest table. Okay, he said. His voice was quiet. Low. Accented but clear. and completely, unsettlingly calm. The courthouse opened at 8 a.m. Amora was there at 7:45, still wearing the emerald gown from the night before, mascara faintly smudged beneath her eyes. The morning sun hit the Lagos Island courthouse like an accusation, bright and merciless. She stood on the steps, arms crossed, the thorned crown tattoo visible above her neckline, and waited. She expected him not to come. She'd left the hotel in a blur. The stranger had followed her out, and in the parking lot, beneath the orange glow of sodium lights, they'd exchanged the barest information. "What's your name?" she'd asked. "Choi Sung-ho." "Are you legal to marry in Nigeria?" "I have a resident permit." "Do you have a criminal record?" A pause. Something flickered in his eyes. "No." "Then be at the Lagos Island courthouse at 8 tomorrow morning." She'd driven away without looking back. Part of her, the rational, strategic part that had built a fashion empire from nothing, screamed that this was insanity. The other part, the part that was still hearing Chidera whisper 8 months on a loop, didn't care. If the world wanted to watch Amora Okoye fall apart, she'd give them something else to watch. He arrived at 7:52. Not in the catering uniform. He wore plain dark trousers and a white shirt, both clean but clearly inexpensive. No watch. No jewelry. Worn leather shoes. He looked like what he appeared to be, a working-class immigrant with nothing to offer a woman like her. But he walked like something else entirely. Amora noticed it as he climbed the courthouse steps. There was no hesitation in his stride. No nervousness. No deference. He moved the way men move when they've entered rooms far more important than this one, with a quiet, centered gravity that had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with power. She filed this observation away and ignored it. "You came," she said. "I said I would." Most people say a lot of things. He looked at her. The morning light caught the sharp planes of his face, high cheekbones, a jaw that could have been cut from stone, eyes so dark they absorbed light rather than reflecting it. "I'm not most people," he said. Something in his tone made her stomach tighten. Not fear. Not attraction. Something adjacent to both. "Let's go," she said. The ceremony, if it could be called that, took 14 minutes. A board registrar. 2 courthouse clerks as witnesses. Fluorescent lighting. The scratch of a pen on paper. Amora signed her name in the bold, sweeping script she used on business contracts. Sung-ho signed his in characters so precise they looked engraved. No vows. No rings. No kiss. When it was done, the registrar looked up. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Choi." Amora flinched at the name. Sung-ho's expression didn't change. They walked out into the Lagos morning, married strangers in a city of 22 million people, and stood on the courthouse steps in silence. "So," Amora said, "where do you live?" Mushin. Mushin. One of the roughest neighborhoods in Lagos. A world away from her eco-Atlantic penthouse. "You'll move into my apartment," she said. "Separate rooms. This is a legal arrangement, not a relationship. Understood?" "Understood." "I'll pay you. Monthly. Consider it a salary for playing the role of husband in public." He tilted his head. The gesture was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it carried a weight that made her feel, suddenly and irrationally, that she was the one being assessed. "I don't need your money," he said. "Everyone needs money." "Not everyone." The silence between them hummed. Amora broke it first. "Fine. No salary. But you follow my rules in my house." "Your house," he repeated. Not agreeing. Not disagreeing. Just acknowledging. She turned and walked toward her car, a white Mercedes G-Wagon that gleamed like a weapon in the sunlight. She didn't open his door. He didn't expect her to. As they drove through the choked Lagos traffic, she glanced at him in the rearview mirror. He sat in the passenger seat, watching the city scroll past with the detached focus of a man cataloguing everything and revealing nothing. "What do you do?" she asked. "Besides catering." "I work where there's work." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "I need to know who I married." He turned his head slowly, met her eyes in the mirror. You married a stranger on purpose, he said. Knowing nothing was the point. The words landed like a blade, precise and clean. She had no response. They drove the rest of the way in silence. The Eco-Atlantic penthouse was 4,200 square feet of controlled perfection. Minimalist Nigerian art on white walls. Italian furniture. A chef's kitchen Amora rarely used. Floor-to-ceiling windows that made the Atlantic Ocean a living painting. Sung-ho walked in and stopped. Not in awe. He stopped the way a tactician stops when entering unfamiliar terrain. Eyes sweeping corners, registering exits, calculating dimensions. His gaze lingered on the security panel by the door, then the reinforced windows, then the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Amora watched him. The guest room is at the end of the hall. Bathroom attached. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself. Thank you. Don't thank me. This isn't generosity. It's strategy. He almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved by a fraction, the ghost of something warmer than his stillness suggested. I understand strategy, he said. Then he walked down the hallway without looking back, and Amora stood alone in her own living room feeling, for the first time, like a guest. She locked herself in the master bedroom and finally broke. Not loudly. Amora Okoye did not wail. She did not throw things. She sat on the edge of her bed, pressed both hands against the tattoo on her collarbone, and let the tears fall in complete, disciplined silence. 8 months. Chidera's face flashed behind her closed eyes. 15 years of friendship, the late-night phone calls during university exams, the shared grief when Amora's mother died, the business advice, the laughter, the promises. We're sisters. Real sisters. Blood couldn't make us closer. All of it performed. All of it hollow. And Deo, charming, brilliant Deo with his easy smile and his grand plans. He'd proposed 6 months ago on a beach in Cape Town, and she'd cried, and Chidera had been there to photograph it, and the whole time. The whole time. Amora pressed her hands harder against her chest. The tattoo burned under her fingers as if the ink itself remembered what she was trying to forget. She cried for 23 minutes. Then she washed her face, reapplied her armor, and walked out to face her new reality. She found him in the kitchen. He'd made tea. Not the Lipton that sat unopened in her cabinet, but something else, a ceramic pot he must have brought with him, filled with a fragrant brew that smelled like roasted barley. He sat at her marble island, both hands wrapped around a simple cup, steam rising in slow spirals. He'd changed into a plain grey t-shirt. His forearms rested on the counter, lean, corded with quiet muscle, marked by a thin scar that ran from his left wrist to his elbow. Amora's gaze caught on the scar. It was too clean, too deliberate, to be accidental. What happened to your arm? She asked. He glanced down. An old disagreement. With who? With someone who no longer disagrees. The words sat in the air between them. Amora felt the hair on her arms rise. Would you like tea? He asked. I don't drink tea. This isn't tea. It's borica. Barley water. Good for stress. I'm not stressed. He looked at her. The look lasted exactly long enough to say, you've been crying. We both know it. I'm choosing not to mention it. She sat down across from him. Accepted the cup. The liquid was warm and clean and somehow grounding, like pressing your feet into earth after a storm. I need to tell you the rules, she said. Go ahead. 1. In public, you are my husband. Affectionate. Attentive. Convincing. I can do that. 2. In private, we are strangers. No questions about my past, my business, or my feelings. Agreed. 3. This lasts 6 months. After that, we divorce quietly. You go back to your life. I go back to mine. He sipped his tea. Set it down. And the real reason. Excuse me. You didn't marry me for 6 months of performance. You married me to make a statement. To prove you're not broken. To force the world to see you standing when they expected you on your knees. Amora's breath caught. So the question, he continued, his voice never rising above a murmur, is what happens when the performance works too well. When the world believes the lie. When you believe it. I won't. People always believe their own stories eventually. She stared at him across the marble counter. The penthouse hummed with the low vibration of the air conditioning. Outside, the Atlantic crashed against the shore in a rhythm older than language. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Your husband," he said. "Isn't that what you wanted?" By noon, the story was everywhere. Fashion mogul Amora Okoye dumps cheating fiancé at own engagement party, marries random caterer on the spot. From billionaire's bride to caterer's wife, Amora Okoye's shocking revenge marriage. Who is Choi Sung-ho? The unknown Korean man who married Nigeria's fashion queen. The headlines were vicious and gleeful. Nigerian Twitter exploded. Instagram was a war zone of hot takes and memes. Fashion industry insiders called Amora's phone until she turned it off. Her business partners sent panicked emails. Her lawyer sent 3 texts in all caps. Amora sat in her home office and read every headline with the detached calm of a general surveying a battlefield. This was expected. This was part of the plan. What she hadn't expected was the second wave of headlines, the ones that came by late afternoon. Sources say Choi Sung-ho has NO social media, NO employment records, and NO verifiable background. Who is Amora's mystery husband? She stared at that headline for a long time. No employment records. For a man who said he worked in catering. No social media. In an age when everyone existed online. No verifiable background. She thought of his eyes in the ballroom. That unnatural calm. The way he'd said okay, as if agreeing to marriage was no more significant than agreeing to a second cup of tea. She thought of the scar on his forearm. She thought of the way he'd walked into her penthouse not like a man entering a palace, but like a man returning to something familiar. A cold finger traced down her spine. She pulled up her laptop, typed his name into every database she had access to, and Amora Okoye had access to many. Corporate registries. Immigration records. International background check services. Nothing. Choi Sung-ho didn't exist. Not before 2 years ago. Before that, the man she'd married was a ghost. She found him on the balcony. The sun was setting over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. He stood with his hands on the railing, his face turned toward the horizon, completely still. The wind moved his hair but nothing else. "I searched your name," Amora said from the doorway. He didn't turn. "And? You don't exist. I'm standing right here. Before 2 years ago, there's nothing. No records, no history, no digital footprint. Nothing." He was silent for a moment. Then, "Does that change our arrangement?" "It changes everything. I need to know who I let into my home." He turned then. Slowly. The dying sunlight carved shadows across his face, deepening the hollows beneath his cheekbones, darkening his eyes until they were black mirrors reflecting the burning sky. "You didn't let me in," he said. "You pulled me in. In front of 200 people. Because you needed a weapon, and I was convenient. That doesn't answer my question." "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." He held her gaze. She held his. The Atlantic roared below them. "I have a past," he said. "Everyone does. Mine is simply quieter than most. I can promise you this, I am not a criminal. I am not a danger to you. And I will keep my word about our arrangement." "That's not enough." "It will have to be. For now. For now. Trust is earned in days, not in hours. You'll know more when you're ready to." "I decide when I'm ready." Again, that almost smile. "Of course you do." She wanted to push. Every instinct in her body screamed to push, to demand, to crack open this man's stillness and find out what lived beneath it. But something held her back, not fear, exactly. Something closer to instinct. The bone-deep sense that if she pushed too hard, she might discover something she wasn't prepared for. "Dinner," she said, changing course. "I'm ordering food. What do you eat?" "Anything." "That's not a preference." "I don't have preferences." Everyone has preferences. People with choices have preferences. I've spent 2 years learning not to have them. The words landed softly, but their impact was a detonation. Amora's throat tightened. For a moment, just a moment, the armor cracked, and she saw him not as a stranger or a prop or a mystery, but as a man who had been hungry, who had been without, who had lived in the kind of silence that comes from having no one to speak to. Korean food, she said. I'll find a place that delivers. Something shifted in his expression. Not gratitude, he was beyond gratitude. Something warmer. Something surprised. Thank you, he said. This time, she didn't tell him not to thank her. 3 days into the marriage, Deo came. Amora was in her home studio, pinning fabric to a mannequin, a new collection she'd been designing before her life imploded. She worked in silence, the way she always worked, with the focus of someone trying to stitch herself back together through her craft. The tattoo on her wrist, a smaller echo of the collarbone piece, a single thorn curling around a crescent moon, caught the studio light as her hands moved. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Okoye, there's a Mr. Deo Adeyemi in the lobby. He's insisting. Send him away. He says it's urgent. He says. I said send him away. The intercom clicked off. Amora exhaled. Returned to the fabric. 45 seconds later, she heard the front door open. Deo had charmed his way past security. Of course he had. Deo could charm his way past anything. It was his gift and his weapon. He stood in her living room in a 2 million Nigerian naira suit, looking exactly like the man she'd loved. Tall, dark, devastatingly handsome, with the kind of smile that made women forget their own names. But the smile wasn't working today. His eyes were red-rimmed. His jaw was tight. Amora, please. Just listen to me. She walked out of the studio. Stood in the hallway. Let him see her, barefoot, in work clothes, hair wrapped in a scarf, no makeup. Let him see that she was not performing for him. Not anymore. You have 30 seconds, she said. That video was planted. Someone is trying to destroy us. Yes, I made a mistake, but Chidera, it wasn't what it looked like. Chidera said 8 months. He faltered. She was exaggerating. Was she exaggerating in the video too? Silence. 20 seconds, Amora said. I love you. I've always loved you. This marriage to some random man, it's not you, Amora. You're better than this. You're punishing yourself to punish me. Maybe I am. 10 seconds. He's nobody. He's a caterer. He's nothing. And you married him to humiliate me. 5. Amora. Time's up. Deo's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists. He took a step forward. And stopped. Because Sung Ho was standing in the hallway behind Amora. Silent. Still. He hadn't made a sound, hadn't announced himself, hadn't cleared his throat, hadn't shifted his weight. He was simply there, the way a shadow is there, the way a wall is there. His eyes were fixed on Deo with an expression that was, on the surface, completely neutral. Blank. Almost pleasant. But Deo took a step back. Later, Amora would wonder about that. Deo was 6'2", athletic, aggressive, the kind of man who dominated rooms. Sung Ho was leaner, shorter, dressed in a t-shirt and borrowed sweatpants. By every visible metric, Deo was the more physically imposing man. But Deo stepped back. Because something in Sung Ho's stillness communicated a truth that muscles and height could not. You are not a threat to me. You are not even an inconvenience. And if you take one more step toward her, you will discover exactly why. Amora, Deo said, his eyes darting between her and the stranger behind her. We're not done. We were done 8 months ago, she said. You just forgot to tell me. She closed the door. Locked it. Turned around. Sung Ho stood in the hallway, hands at his sides, face unreadable. You didn't have to do that, she said. I didn't do anything. You were there. I live here. She stared at him. He stared back. The air between them vibrated with something she refused to name. Thank you, she said. He nodded once and walked back to his room. That night, Amora couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment Deo had stepped back. Replaying the look in Sung-ho's eyes, that absolute, controlled stillness that radiated more danger than any threat she'd ever witnessed. Who was this man? She got up, walked to the kitchen for water, found him already there. He was sitting on the floor, not at the counter, not on a chair, but on the cold marble floor with his back against the refrigerator, his eyes closed, breathing in a measured rhythm that suggested either meditation or the discipline of a man who'd learned to sleep in uncomfortable places. He opened his eyes when she entered. No startle. No disorientation. Instant awareness. "The bed is uncomfortable," she asked. "The bed is fine. I'm not used to beds." The statement hit her harder than it should have. Not used to beds. What kind of life had he lived? She sat down. Not next to him, across from him, her back against the kitchen island, her legs stretched out. They sat on her expensive Italian marble floor in the dark penthouse, two strangers in a fake marriage, and for the first time, the silence between them felt less like distance and more like a bridge. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You'll ask regardless. Why did you say yes? At the party. When I proposed. Why?" He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. "Because you looked like someone I used to know," he said finally. "Someone who made a decision in pain and didn't survive the consequences. I wanted to see if you'd survive yours." That's a strange reason to marry someone. Strange reasons are the only honest ones. She pulled her knees to her chest. The tattoo on her wrist caught a sliver of moonlight from the window. "The person you used to know," she said. "Who were they?" "Someone I couldn't save." The words hung in the darkness between them. She heard the ocean. She heard his breathing. She heard her own heart, beating faster than it should. "You're not what you seem," she whispered. "Neither are you." "I'm exactly what I seem. Angry. Humiliated. Using you to prove a point." "No," he said softly. "You're terrified. Not of your ex. Not of the scandal. You're terrified that you gave 15 years to a friendship and 3 years to a relationship and received nothing real in return. You're terrified that your judgment is broken. That you can't trust yourself to know what's real." The accuracy of his words was surgical. She felt them slice through every layer of armor she'd built. "Don't," she said. Her voice cracked. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "See me." He held her gaze in the moonlit kitchen. "Too late," he said. 1 week later, they made their first public appearance as a couple. The occasion was the Lagos Fashion Collective's annual showcase, an event Amora couldn't miss without signaling weakness. The fashion world was watching. The gossip columns were sharpening their knives. Every designer, buyer, and socialite in attendance would be studying her for cracks. She would give them none. She dressed carefully. A black structured gown that covered her shoulders but left her collarbone tattoo visible, always visible. Silver earrings. Minimal makeup. She looked like what she was, a queen who'd been ambushed but refused to abdicate. The problem was her husband. She stood in the living room and looked at him. He wore the only decent outfit she'd been able to source on short notice. Black trousers, white dress shirt, no tie. The clothes fit adequately but not well. He looked clean, presentable, and completely out of place in her world. But his face, his posture, the way he held his shoulders and the way his eyes surveyed the room. "Stop that," she said. "Stop what?" "Standing like that." "Like what?" "Like you own the room." He blinked, adjusted his stance, subtly, almost imperceptibly, and suddenly looked more like an uncertain immigrant husband and less like whatever he'd been a moment before. The transition was so smooth, so practiced, that Amora's blood went cold. He'd just performed ordinariness. The way an actor performs a role. The way someone who is not ordinary has to consciously become so. "Let's go," she said, her voice tighter than she intended. The Lagos Fashion Collective was held at a converted warehouse in Victoria Island, transformed into a cathedral of light and fabric. The who's who of Nigerian fashion lined the entrance like a gauntlet. Amora stepped out of the car. Cameras erupted. Questions flew like bullets. Amora, is this your new husband? Choi Sung-ho, what do you do for a living? Amora, do you have a statement about Daeo's claims that? Amora smiled. The smile was a weapon, sharp, controlled, revealing nothing. She walked forward. Sung-ho walked beside her. Not behind. Beside. He didn't shield his face from the cameras. He didn't flinch at the shouted questions. He walked through the chaos with the same unnerving calm he brought to everything, and something about his stillness amid the frenzy made the cameras linger on him. Inside, the whispers began immediately. That's him. The caterer. He's actually not bad looking. She's lost her mind. Look at his shoes. He's wearing market shoes to the Lagos Fashion Collective. Amora heard everything. Catalogued everything. Prepared to manage everything. What she wasn't prepared for was the moment Sung-ho placed his hand on the small of her back. The touch was light. Professional. Perfectly calibrated for a public setting. The exact gesture a loving husband would make. But his hand was warm, and his fingers pressed against her spine with a confidence that sent electricity racing up her vertebrae. She glanced at him. He wasn't looking at her. He was scanning the room, casually, naturally, but with the systematic precision of someone identifying every exit, every threat, every person of consequence. A military scan. That was what it was. She recognized it because her late uncle, a retired general, used to do the same thing. You've done this before, she murmured, leaning close under the pretense of affection. Done what? Entered a room like you're assessing danger. His hand pressed slightly firmer against her back. You should be assessing danger too. Your ex-fiancé is here. 3 o'clock. Amora's eyes cut right. Daeo. Across the room. In a navy suit. With Chidera. They'd come together. Publicly. Already. The betrayal that Amora thought she'd processed hit her fresh and raw, like ripping a bandage off a wound that hadn't healed. She felt her composure waver. Felt the cracks splintering. And then Sung-ho did something unexpected. He leaned down. His lips brushed her ear, so close she could feel the warmth of his breath, but not touching. To the room, it looked intimate. Romantic. A husband whispering to his wife. What he said was, they came here to watch you break. Don't give them the satisfaction. You are the most powerful person in this room. Act like it. His voice was a low hum against her ear. The words wrapped around her spine like steel wire, pulling her upright. She straightened. The cracks sealed. The armor reformed. She turned toward Daeo and Chidera. And she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a polite smile. A smile that said, I see you. I survived you. And I am not alone. Then she turned back to Sung-ho and, for the benefit of every camera in the room, adjusted his collar with the casual tenderness of a wife who adored her husband. His eyes met hers. Close enough to see the flecks of amber hidden in the dark brown. Close enough to see something shift behind his careful mask, something warm and dangerous and entirely unplanned. Good, he murmured. I wasn't doing it for you, she replied. I know. But she held his gaze 1 second too long. And he held hers. And somewhere in that second, the lie they were performing flickered, and something real moved beneath it like a current beneath still water. 3 weeks into the marriage, the first crack in Sung-ho's disguise appeared. It happened at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Amora woke to sounds from the living room, not loud sounds, but precise ones. The soft impact of controlled movement. The whisper of fabric cutting air. She rose, wrapped herself in a robe, and moved silently down the hallway. She stopped at the edge of the living room and pressed herself against the wall. Sung-ho was in the center of the room. The furniture had been pushed to the walls. He moved in the cleared space with a fluidity that stopped her breath. It was not exercise. It was not dance. It was a martial form, slow and devastating, each movement flowing into the next with the precision of a man who had trained for decades, not years. His body cut through the air in spirals and strikes, his bare feet silent on the marble, his face utterly blank with concentration. But it was his hands that terrified her. They moved with a lethality that was beautiful and horrifying in equal measure. Each strike, each block, each flowing transition carried the embedded memory of real combat. Not performance, not sport. Violence. Controlled, refined, purposeful violence. The scar on his forearm caught the moonlight with each rotation. Amora watched for 4 full minutes before she made a sound. A breath. A shift of weight. He stopped mid-movement. Turned his head toward the hallway. His eyes found hers in the darkness instantly. Not searching, not scanning. He knew exactly where she was. Go back to bed, Amora, he said. His voice was different. Not the mild, quiet tone of the man she'd married. This voice was a command. Low. Absolute. The voice of a man accustomed to obedience. She didn't go back to bed. She stepped into the living room. What was that? She asked. He lowered his hands. Gukung Musel. A Korean martial discipline. You don't learn to move like that in a catering job. No, you don't. Who are you, Sung-ho? He was silent. The moonlight painted half his face in silver and left the other half in shadow. I was someone, he said. Before I was no one. That's not an answer. It's the most honest thing I've ever said. She crossed her arms. The tattoo on her collarbone burned. I'm starting to think I made a mistake. You did, he said. But not the one you think. Before she could respond, his phone, a battered, cracked screen device she'd never seen him use, buzzed on the kitchen counter. He moved to it. Read the screen. His face changed. The stillness was still there, but beneath it, something shifted. Something cold. Something calculating. I need to leave for a few hours, he said. At 2 a.m. Yes. Where? He looked at her. And for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that looked like a warning. Not for her. For whatever waited beyond the door. Somewhere I hoped I'd never go again, he said. He left. She stood in the empty living room, heart pounding, surrounded by the ghost of his movements. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He returned at dawn. There was blood on his knuckles. Not his, the skin was unbroken. He washed his hands in the kitchen sink with mechanical precision, dried them, and made borica as if nothing had happened. Amora sat at the counter and watched. Said nothing. Waited. He set a cup in front of her. Don't ask, he said. I have to ask. Not yet. Please. It was the please that stopped her. He'd never said it before. Not once. The word fell from his lips like it cost him something, like vulnerability was a currency he couldn't afford. She lifted the cup. Drank. The barley water was warm and grounding. When? She asked. Soon, he said. I promise. Promises mean nothing to me anymore. I know. I'll make it mean something. Week 4. The public narrative was shifting. Against every prediction, Amora's marriage was not destroying her brand. It was amplifying it. The story of a powerful woman scorned by her fiancé, who chose dignity over despair by marrying a humble man, resonated with something primal in the public consciousness. Amora Okoye chose a good man over a rich one. That's the real power move. Her social media following tripled. Okoye Designs received more orders in 4 weeks than in the previous 6 months. Magazines that had been preparing post-scandal obituaries were now writing redemption features. And at the center of every photograph, every interview, every public appearance, Sung-ho. Quiet. Steady. The perfect husband. Too perfect. Amora noticed it. The way he anticipated every social cue. The way he navigated conversations with diplomats and CEOs with a fluency that went beyond manners. It was cultural literacy, the kind that came from sitting in boardrooms, not serving them. At a charity gala, she watched him speak French to the Senegalese ambassador. Flawless French. The ambassador's eyes widened with surprised delight. Afterward, in the car, where did you learn French? I lived in Paris. When? Before. Before what? He turned to the window. Before everything ended. She was learning to read his silences. This one meant, I want to tell you. I'm not ready. The truth is bigger than you think. It terrified her. Not the secrecy. The growing realization that she wanted him to trust her with it. That somewhere, between the performance and the reality, she'd begun to care. Week 5 brought Chidera. Amora was alone in her studio when the intercom buzzed. This time, the name on the screen made her blood freeze. Chidera Ease. She almost declined. Almost. But 15 years of friendship, even destroyed friendship, had left neural pathways that her fury couldn't fully erase. She'd loved this woman. That was the unbearable part. Not the betrayal with Deo, but the betrayal of the friendship itself. Send her up. Chidera entered the penthouse like a woman approaching a landmine. She wore white, symbolic or strategic, Amora couldn't tell. Her eyes were swollen. She'd lost weight. Good, Amora thought. Then hated herself for thinking it. Amora, don't say you're sorry. Chidera flinched. Then what do I say? Nothing. There's nothing to say. You slept with my fiancé for 8 months while looking me in the eye. You helped plan my engagement party while sharing his bed. You sat in this apartment and drank my wine and called me sister while. Her voice broke. She stopped, pressed her fingers against her collarbone tattoo until the pressure became pain, and the pain became focus. Why? Amora whispered. Just tell me why. Chidera's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup, revealing the rawness beneath. Because I was jealous, she said. Of everything. Your business, your confidence, the way every room bends toward you when you walk in. I've spent 15 years standing next to you and feeling invisible. Deo saw me. He made me feel seen. He saw an opportunity. You were never a person to him. Kai, you were revenge against me for something I didn't even know I'd done. Maybe. But it felt real. Feelings don't make things real. Actions do. And your actions destroyed us. Chidera reached for Amora's hand. Amora pulled away. Get out, Amora said. Amora, please. Get out of my house. Chidera left. The elevator doors closed. Amora stood in her living room and shook, not with sadness, not with anger, but with the particular grief of losing someone who was already gone. She didn't hear Sung-ho enter. She didn't know he was there until she felt the weight of a blanket settle over her shoulders. Gentle, almost imperceptible. She turned. He stood behind her, close but not touching, holding the space between them with the precision of a man who understood that some pain cannot be shared, only witnessed. You don't have to be strong right now, he said. I don't know how to be anything else. Then be strong later. Right now, just breathe. She breathed. And for reasons she couldn't explain, the air came easier with him standing there. Week 6. The incident at the restaurant. They were dining at Noir, a high-end Victoria Island restaurant, maintaining the public facade. Amora wore a backless dress, the tattoo on the nape of her neck visible, a single line of thorns descending her spine like a dark poem. The evening was unremarkable until a man approached their table. Korean. Mid-40s. Expensive suit. He stopped beside their table, and Amora watched Sung-ho's transformation happen in real time. His hand, which had been lifting a water glass, froze. His jaw tightened, a millimeter, maybe 2. His eyes went flat. Dead flat. The warmth, the mild pleasantness, the careful performance of ordinariness, all of it vanished like a candle blown out. The man spoke in Korean. Rapid. Urgent. His tone carried a deference that seemed almost fearful. Sung-ho responded in Korean. One sentence. His voice dropped to a register Amora had never heard. Cold, metallic, absolute. The voice of authority. Of command. The man bowed. Not a casual bow. A deep, formal bow, the kind Amora had only seen in Korean dramas, reserved for elders, superiors, or royalty. The man left. Sung-ho's hand resumed lifting the water glass. He drank. Set it down. Looked at Amora. Business associate, he said. He bowed to you. Korean custom. That wasn't a regular bow. His eyes met hers. For a moment, one fractured, terrifying moment, she saw it. Behind the mask, behind the calm, Behind the carefully constructed identity of a poor immigrant worker, something vast and powerful shifted like tectonic plates beneath still ground. Then it was gone. The mask reformed. The mild, quiet man returned. "The food is excellent," he said. "Would you like dessert?" She didn't press. But she went home that night and lay in bed with her heart pounding, staring at the ceiling, replaying the bow over and over in her mind. That was not a bow given to an ordinary man. That was a bow given to a king. Week 7 changed everything. It began with a phone call Amora wasn't supposed to hear. She was passing the guest room, his room, when she heard his voice. Low. Intense. Speaking Korean in rapid, clipped phrases that carried the cadence of someone issuing instructions, not receiving them. She stopped. Pressed her back against the wall. Listened. She didn't understand the words. But she understood tone. She understood power dynamics. And the tone coming through that door was the tone of a man who controlled something vast. One phrase came through clearly, not Korean, but English, embedded in the conversation. "Tell Chairman Kang that the Seoul board does not move without my authorization. Not one share. Not one vote. Not one breath." Amora's hand flew to her mouth. Chairman Kang. The Seoul board. Shares. Votes. Authorization. Her mind raced. She pulled out her phone. Typed Chairman Kang Seoul into Google. The results loaded. Kang Industries. South Korea's third largest conglomerate. Market capitalization. $47 billion. Sectors. Technology, real estate, defense. Founded 1962. Current interim chairman. Kang Jae-won, serving in the absence of. She scrolled down. Found the line that made the world tilt beneath her feet. In the absence of former CEO and majority shareholder Choi Sung-ho, whose sudden departure from the company in 2022 remains unexplained. A photograph accompanied the article. A man in an impeccably tailored suit, standing at a podium, addressing what appeared to be the United Nations General Assembly. Sharp cheekbones. Dark, absorbing eyes. The same jawline. The same quiet authority in the set of his shoulders. The same man who was currently standing in her guest room, in borrowed clothes, pretending to be no one. Amora's phone slipped from her fingers. It hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed through the hallway. The conversation behind the door stopped. Footsteps. The door opened. Sung-ho stood in the doorway. Their eyes met. He looked down at her phone on the floor, screen up, his own face staring back at him from a Bloomberg article. The silence was the loudest thing Amora had ever heard. His face didn't change. Not surprise. Not guilt. Not panic. Just that infinite, devastating calm. "Amora," he said. "You're not a caterer," she whispered. "No. You're not poor. No. You were, Kang Industries, $47 billion. Amora. You lied to me." The scream ripped from her chest with a force that surprised them both. It wasn't the controlled fury she'd shown Deo. It wasn't the cold precision she'd used with Chidera. It was raw. Primal. The howl of a woman who had sworn never to be deceived again and had just discovered that the one person she'd begun to trust was the biggest lie of all. Everything, this whole arrangement, the humble man, the catering uniform, the Borika, all of it was a performance. "Who are you? Who are you?" He stepped forward. She stepped back. Her spine hit the wall. "I am exactly who I showed you," he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes, for the first time, held something she'd never seen in them before. Pain. "I left that world. By choice. I left the company, the money, the name. I left because that world took everything from me. My family, my trust, he stopped. Swallowed. I came to Lagos to disappear. The catering job was real. The poverty was real. The man you married was real. But you're a billionaire. I was. I chose not to be. People don't choose poverty. People choose survival. And I was not surviving in that world. I was dying. Slowly. In boardrooms and betrayals and..." He stopped again. Something in his composure cracked, just for a moment. Just enough for her to see the wound beneath. "I was betrayed too," he said quietly. Not by a friend or a lover. By everyone. My board. My family. My country. I built an empire, and it was stolen from me by the people I trusted most. The departure wasn't voluntary. It was exile. Dressed up as a resignation. The hallway hummed with silence. Amora pressed her hands against the wall behind her. Her collarbone tattoo rose and fell with her ragged breathing. Thorns wrapping a cracked crown. She'd gotten it to remind herself that she survived. She looked at the man before her. His mask was gone. Not fully, he was too controlled for that, but enough. Enough to see that beneath the calm, beneath the stillness, beneath the impossible discipline, there was a man who had been broken and had rebuilt himself in the only way he could, by becoming no one. You should have told me, she said. When? The night you proposed to a stranger. The morning you married me at a courthouse. The week you needed a prop, not a person. The words hit like a slap. You're right, she said. I used you. Yes. And you let me. Yes. Why? He held her gaze. The hallway stretched between them like a canyon. 3 feet of marble floor that felt like an ocean. Because, he said, for the first time in 2 years, someone looked at me and saw a man. Not a name. Not a fortune. Not a chess piece. A man. Even if you only needed a weapon, you treated me like a human being. And I had forgotten what that felt like. Amora's eyes burned. The tears she'd refused to shed since the engagement party, since Chidera, since Deo, since the world crumbled, pressed against her eyelids with unbearable pressure. I need time, she whispered. Take all the time you need. Don't leave. The words escaped before she could stop them. She didn't know why she'd said them. She didn't know what they meant. But the moment they left her lips, she knew they were the truest thing she'd said in weeks. His eyes softened. Just barely. Just enough. I'm not going anywhere, he said. She retreated to her bedroom. Locked the door. Sat on the edge of her bed, and for the second time since this began, let herself break. But this time, the tears were different. Not the tears of a woman betrayed. The tears of a woman who had finally found something real, and was terrified it would destroy her. Because Amora Okoye had married a stranger for revenge. And the stranger was a hidden king. And the king was looking at her the way no one, not Deo, not anyone, had ever looked at her before. Like she was the only real thing in a world full of lies. 3 days of silence. Amora moved through her penthouse like a ghost in her own life. She worked. She ate. She breathed. But she did not speak to Sung-ho, and he did not force her to. He maintained his presence with the same quiet discipline that defined everything about him. Making borica in the morning, cleaning his own dishes, retreating to his room. He didn't hover. He didn't pursue. He existed in her space like a held breath, patiently waiting for permission to exhale. On the 3rd morning, she found a note on the kitchen counter. Written in precise, almost architectural handwriting. I understand your anger. I will answer any question you ask, whenever you're ready. But know this, the man in the catering uniform was not a disguise. He was who I became when I had nothing left. And he is the man who said yes to you. S. Amora read the note 4 times. Folded it carefully. Placed it in the drawer where she kept her mother's jewelry. She didn't examine why. That evening, she knocked on his door. He opened it immediately. He was wearing the grey t-shirt that had become his uniform, the scar on his forearm visible, a map of the violence that lived in his past. Sit down, she said, walking past him into the guest room. He sat on the edge of the bed. She remained standing. The power dynamic was deliberate. She needed to feel in control, even if every cell in her body was vibrating with confusion. Tell me everything, she said. From the beginning. He took a breath. Let it out slowly. And for the first time, the wall came down. He was born Choi Sung-ho in Busan, South Korea. The only son of Choi Minute-jae, a dock worker turned shipping mogul who built Kang Industries from a single container ship into one of Asia's largest conglomerates. The Kang name was adopted from his mother's family, a powerful political dynasty that opened doors his father's money alone could not. Sung-ho inherited the company at 28, when his father died of a heart attack mid-board meeting. He restructured the company. expanded into technology and defense, tripled the revenue. By 32, he was on Forbes' list. By 34, he was advising governments. I was not a good person, he said. I was effective. Ruthless, when necessary. I believed that power was protection. That if I controlled enough, nothing could touch me. He was wrong. The betrayal came from within. His uncle, his mother's brother, Kang Jae-won, orchestrated a boardroom coup. Fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. Turned Sung-ho's own executives against him. Leaked falsified documents to the Korean press. In 1 week, I went from the most powerful man in Korean business to a national disgrace. My accounts were frozen. My properties were seized. My own mother chose her brother over her son. He said this without self-pity. The words were flat, clinical, the recitation of a man who had processed his pain through years of silence and discipline. I could have fought, he continued. I had allies. Resources. But fighting would have meant war, corporate, legal, possibly literal. People would have died. Good people. And I realized that the throne I was fighting for had never been worth the blood it cost. So he left. Dismantled his identity. Liquidated hidden accounts across untraceable channels. Moved through 6 countries in 18 months, Japan, Vietnam, Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and finally Nigeria. Took jobs that required no name and no history. Became the thing his uncle wanted him to be. Nobody. Lagos was supposed to be the last stop, he said. I was going to disappear permanently. Build a small life. Forget. And then I proposed to you at a party, Amora said. And then you proposed to me at a party. The ghost of something almost like a smile crossed his face. Why did you really say yes? She asked. He looked at her. The look lasted too long. Went too deep. Because you were standing in the middle of your own destruction, and you chose defiance. Not tears. Not collapse. Defiance. And I thought, irrationally, impossibly, that a woman who chooses defiance over surrender might understand what I've been running from. Amora's chest ached. Not from pain. From recognition. The exact, uncanny feeling of being understood by someone who should have been a stranger. Do you still have access to the money? She asked. Some. Hidden accounts. Enough. How much is enough? Approximately $2 billion. The number hung in the air like a detonation. 2 billion, she repeated flatly. I don't touch it. I don't want it. It's insurance, not identity. You've been washing dishes in my kitchen while sitting on $2 billion. Wealth without purpose is just weight. She stared at him. He stared back. And despite everything, the lies, the deception, the impossible absurdity of her situation, she felt something she hadn't expected. Respect. Not for his money. Not for his power. For the man who had walked away from both and survived. I'm still angry, she said. I know. But I understand. I know that too. She turned to leave. Stopped at the door. Sung-ho. Yes. The Borica. Make it for 2 tomorrow morning. She closed the door behind her. And in the darkness of his borrowed room, Choi Sung-ho pressed his hands together, closed his eyes, and let himself feel, for the first time in years, something dangerously close to hope. The shift was not dramatic. It was glacial, a millimeter at a time, measured in mornings. They drank Borica together at the kitchen counter. First in silence. Then in fragments of conversation. Small, careful, like people learning to walk after an injury. Your mother, he said one morning. The tattoo is for her. Amora touched her collarbone. She died when I was 28. Ovarian cancer. I got the tattoo the day after the funeral. The thorns represent what I survived. The crown represents what she gave me. What did she give you? The belief that I was enough. Without a man, without validation, without anyone's permission. Just enough. He nodded. Sipped his tea. My father gave me the opposite. He gave me the belief that I was only as valuable as my last victory. Is that why you left? I left because I realized he was wrong. But I'd spent 34 years building a life on his philosophy. Walking away felt like dying. And now? He looked at the sunlight streaming through the window. Looked at the cup in his hands. Looked at her. Now feels like something else. Week 8. The dynamic changed. It started with small things. Sung-ho began cooking dinner. Korean dishes adapted with Nigerian ingredients. Jjigae with Scotch bonnet peppers. Bibimbap with plantain. The fusion was strange and improbable and somehow delicious. Amora found herself lingering in the kitchen, watching him cook. His hands moved with the same precision he brought to everything. Chopping, seasoning, adjusting heat, and she realized she was not watching a man cook. She was watching a man care. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know." "Then why?" "Because you eat takeout every night, and you're losing weight. Your body is consuming itself. Grief does that." "I'm not grieving." He glanced at her. The look said everything. She sat down. 8. The food was warm and complex and made her feel, for a fleeting moment, like someone's priority. "It's good," she admitted. "I know," he said. She laughed. It surprised them both. The sound was rusty, unfamiliar, but real. He looked at her, and the look on his face, unguarded, startled, illuminated by something raw, stopped her laughter mid-breath. "Don't," she said. "Don't what?" "Look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I matter." The kitchen went still. The air thickened. She could hear her own heartbeat. "You matter," he said simply. "That's not a look. It's a fact." She stood up, walked to the counter, placed both palms flat on the marble. The tattoo on her wrist caught the kitchen light. "This is supposed to be a performance," she said. 6 months. Separate lives. Remember? "I remember." "Then stop making it feel real." He set down the spatula, walked around the counter, stood close enough that she could feel the heat of his body but not close enough to touch. The distance between them was measured in intention, his restraint, her resistance, the gravity pulling them together against every rational objection. "What if it is real?" he asked. "It can't be." "Why?" "Because I don't trust it. I don't trust myself to know the difference between real and performed. Deo performed love for 3 years and I believed every second. Chidera performed friendship for 15 years and I never once doubted. I cannot afford to believe in something that might be another lie. I'm not them. I know. But I'm still me. Still the woman whose judgment failed. Still the woman who trusted the wrong people. And if I trust you and I'm wrong again, you won't survive it." She looked at him, eyes burning. "No, I won't." He held the silence for a long time. Then he stepped back, gave her space, gave her air. "Then I'll wait," he said, "until you can tell the difference. However long it takes." He returned to the stove, finished cooking, served 2 plates. They ate in a silence that hummed with everything neither of them said. Week 9 brought the storm. Amora was in her office at Okoye Design's headquarters when her assistant knocked with a face drained of color. "There's a man here to see you. Korean. He says he knows your husband." Amora's stomach dropped. "Send him in." The man who entered was not the same one from the restaurant. This man was older, 60s, silver-haired, with the carved precision of someone who'd been beautiful in youth and had aged into something more dangerous than beauty. He wore a suit that cost more than Amora's car. "Mrs. Choi," he said, bowing slightly. "My name is Kang Jae-won. I believe you know my nephew." Kang Jae-won. The uncle. The man who'd stolen Sung-ho's empire. Amora's blood turned to ice, but her face remained smooth. 15 years in the fashion industry had taught her to negotiate with predators while smiling. "Have a seat, Mr. Kang." He Saturday. Crossed his legs. Smiled the way a shark smiles, with all teeth and no warmth. "I'll be direct," he said. "My nephew's holiday has gone on long enough. Kang Industries requires his signature on certain documents. Legal matters. Inheritance matters. The kind of matters that cannot be resolved in his absence." Then I suggest you speak to him directly. I've tried. He is resistant to family communication, but a wife's influence. Let me stop you there. Amora leaned forward. The collarbone tattoo was visible above her blouse, thorns wrapping a cracked crown. I am not an intermediary. I am not a tool. And I am not someone who carries messages for men who betray their own blood. Kang's smile didn't waver, but his eyes changed. Something cold entered them, the coldness of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted through any means necessary. Mrs. Choi, you are a talented businesswoman. Okoye Designs is impressive for a company of its size. But you operate in a world of millions. I operate in a world of billions. And I am not asking. The threat landed softly, but its edges were razor sharp. Are you threatening me, Mr. Kang? I'm informing you. My nephew has something I need. If I cannot reach him through conventional channels, I will use unconventional ones. And those channels tend to be messy. He stood, placed a card on her desk, walked to the door. 1 week, Mrs. Choi. Convince him to sign, and I'll make Okoye Designs a global brand overnight. Fail, and I'll make it disappear just as fast. He left. Amora sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the card. Her hands were steady. Her mind was not. She picked up her phone. Called Sung Ho. He answered on the first ring. What happened? She told him. Every word. Every threat. Every micro-expression on Kang Jae-won's face. When she finished, the silence on the other end was absolute. Then, pack a bag. We're leaving the penthouse tonight. Where are we going? Somewhere he can't reach. Sung Ho, I'm not running from. This is not running. This is positioning. There's a difference. I'll explain everything when I see you. The line went dead. He took her to Ipe. An hour outside Lagos, down unmarked roads, through dense mangrove forest, to a compound that shouldn't have existed. Behind high walls and a security gate that required 3 separate codes, a modern house sat among mango trees and bougainvillea, invisible from every road and every satellite. How long have you had this place? Amora asked as they pulled through the gate. Since my first month in Nigeria. I prepared for the possibility that my uncle would find me. You built a safe house. I built options. The house was sparse but comfortable. Clean lines. Functional furniture. A security system that Amora recognized as military grade, the kind her uncle the general would have approved of. Sung Ho carried her bag inside. Set it in the bedroom. Turned to face her. I need to tell you everything now, he said. All of it. The full truth. I'm listening. He sat at the kitchen table. She sat across from him. The mango trees cast dappled shadows through the windows. Kang Industries was not just a corporation, he began. It was the economic arm of a political machine. My uncle used the company to fund political campaigns, to launder money for government officials, to build a shadow network that controlled South Korean policy from behind closed doors. When I became CEO, I began dismantling that network. Pulling the company into legitimate operations. Cutting ties with corrupt officials. And your uncle didn't approve. My uncle needed the network to survive. Without it, his political allies would abandon him, and without political allies, his control over the board was meaningless. So he destroyed me instead. Framed me. Exiled me. And used the company to deepen the corruption I'd spent years trying to eliminate. What does he need you to sign? Sung Ho's jaw tightened. A transfer of my remaining shares. 43% of Kang Industries. Without those shares, he cannot complete a merger with a Chinese state-owned enterprise. A deal that would give him access to military contracts worth $60 billion. $60 billion. And the power that comes with it. My uncle doesn't want money. He wants to be untouchable. And my shares are the last thing standing between him and that goal. Amora processed this. The scale of it was staggering, not just wealth but geopolitical influence, the kind of power that moved armies and redrew borders. And if you don't sign, he'll escalate. He's already here. That means he's brought resources. Lawyers. Investigators. Possibly worse. Worse. Sung-ho met her eyes. My uncle has never been opposed to violence when other methods fail. The words settled in the room like a physical weight. The mango trees rustled outside. A bird called. Are you in danger? She asked. I've been in danger since I left Seoul. Am I in danger? He paused. The pause was worse than any answer. I will not let anything happen to you, he said. That's not a promise. It's a certainty. That's not what I asked. I know. She leaned back, crossed her arms. The tattoo on the back of her neck, the line of thorns descending her spine, seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Then we fight, she said. He looked at her with surprise. Genuine, unfiltered surprise, the first she'd ever seen break through his control. We, he said. You married me. For better or worse. We didn't say vows, but I don't need ceremonies to keep my word. If your uncle wants a war, he'll fight us both. The look on his face transformed. The surprise deepened into something else, something vulnerable and fierce and achingly human. For a moment, the hidden king vanished, and in his place sat a man who had been alone for so long that the word we sounded like salvation. Amora. Don't argue with me. I've negotiated with Nigerian senators and survived Nollywood divas. A corporate uncle doesn't scare me. The faintest ghost of a real smile crossed his face. Not the almost smile she'd grown used to. A real one. Brief. Rare. Devastating. You're remarkable, he said. I know. Now tell me the plan. The plan was elegant in its ruthlessness. Sung-ho had spent 2 years in exile, but he had not been idle. Hidden within the safe house was a vault, digital and physical, containing evidence that Kang Jae-won had spent a decade trying to destroy. Financial records. Offshore accounts. Communication logs. Video recordings of meetings between Kang Jae-won and corrupt government officials. Evidence of fraud, bribery, embezzlement, and conspiracy. I took it all before I left, Sung-ho said, opening a secure laptop. Insurance. I never intended to use it. I wanted to disappear, not destroy. And now? Now he's threatened someone he stopped. Corrected himself. Now he's crossed a line. Amora heard the correction. The unfinished phrase hung in the air like a heartbeat. Someone She didn't push. But she stored it. Held it. Turned it over in her mind like a jewel catching light. We need to get this evidence to the right people, she said, her business mind engaging. Not the Korean press, they're compromised. International media. Financial regulators. Interpol. I have contacts at the Financial Times. And a former ally at the Korean prosecutor's office who was forced out during the coup. He's been waiting for this. Then we move fast. Before your uncle does. They worked through the night. Amora at one end of the table, organizing the narrative. She was, after all, a woman who understood the power of story. Sung-ho at the other end, verifying data, authenticating documents, making encrypted calls in Korean that lasted seconds and carried the weight of years. At 3 a.m., she looked up and found him watching her. Not the assessing gaze she'd grown accustomed to. Something softer. Something unguarded. He looked away quickly, too quickly, and returned to his screen. But she'd seen it. And it terrified her. Not because of what it meant for him. Because of what it meant for her. Day 3 in Ypres. The tension between them reached its limit. They were arguing. Not about strategy, about her. You're not going back to Lagos until this is resolved, he said. My company is in Lagos. My staff, my clients, my life. Your life is at risk. My life is always at risk. I'm a successful black woman in Nigeria. Risk is my permanent address. This is different. It's always different. And I'm always told to stand down, step back, let someone else handle it. I didn't build Okoye Designs by stepping back. I'm not asking you to step back. I'm asking you to survive. Don't do that. Do what? Make it sound like you care. I do care. The words exploded from him with a force that shocked them both. He never raised his voice. Never. In 9 weeks, through every crisis and confrontation, he had maintained perfect control. The control was gone. "I care," he repeated, quieter now, but raw. "I care that your ex destroyed your trust. I care that your best friend stabbed you in the back. I care that you walk through the world armored because you're terrified that softness will kill you. I care that you married a stranger because you couldn't bear to be alone with your pain. And I care that you're standing in front of me right now, ready to walk into danger, because admitting you need protection feels like admitting defeat." He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the rapid pulse in his throat. Close enough to see that his hands were shaking, minutely, barely, but shaking. The hidden king, the man who'd controlled a $47 billion empire, was trembling because of her. "I am not Deo," he said. "I am not performing. I am not executing a strategy. I am standing here, terrified, because somewhere between the Borika and the midnight conversations and watching you refuse to break, I stop. No, Sung-ho. I fell in love with you." The words landed in the space between them like a thunderclap in a silent room. Amora's breath stopped. Her vision blurred. The tattoo on her collarbone seemed to burn, not with pain but with something older, deeper, something that recognized truth when it heard it. "You can't," she whispered. "It's already done." This was supposed to be a performance. The performance ended weeks ago. You know that. She did know. She'd known since the night on the kitchen floor. Since the morning he'd left the note. Since the first time he'd whispered in her ear at the gala and she'd felt her spine straighten and her heart crack open. She'd known, and she'd been running from it, because believing it meant risking everything, and she had so little left to risk. "I'm scared," she said. The admission cost her more than any business deal, any public humiliation, any betrayal. "I'm so scared, Sung-ho." "I know. If this isn't real." "It's real. If you leave." "I won't. If this is a lie." He crossed the final distance. Not touching. Standing so close that their breath mingled, that the heat of his body radiated into hers, that she could count the lashes framing his dark eyes. "I have lied about many things," he said. "My name. My history. My purpose. But I have never lied about this. The way I look at you is the truest thing left in my life." A tear escaped her eye. Rolled down her cheek. He lifted his hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and caught it with his thumb. His palm cradled her face. His touch was warm and impossibly gentle. The touch of a man who understood that some things, once broken, can only be held softly. She closed her eyes. Leaned into his hand. "Don't let me fall," she whispered. "Never." She kissed him. Not with performance. Not with strategy. With the raw, terrifying honesty of a woman choosing to trust again despite every scar that told her not to. His arms wrapped around her, carefully, reverently, and he kissed her back with the desperation of a man who'd been alone for so long that love felt like a language he'd forgotten. The kiss deepened. The world narrowed. Everything else, Kang Jae-won, the threats, the performance, the pain, fell away. And then, gently, inevitably, they moved into the bedroom, and the door closed softly behind them, and the night held its breath. Fade to black. In the morning, they woke tangled together. Sunlight through mango trees. The distant sound of birds. Amora traced the scar on his forearm. "Tell me about this." "My uncle's men. The night I left Seoul. They tried to stop me." "You fought them." "I survived them." She pressed her lips to the scar. He inhaled sharply. Drew her closer. "No more walls," she said. "No more walls," he agreed. They moved fast. Amora leveraged her connections, media contacts, political allies, international fashion industry figures who owed her favors. Sung-ho activated dormant networks across 3 continents. Within 72 hours, the evidence against Kang Jae-won was in the hands of the Financial Times, the Korean Prosecutor's Office, Interpol's Financial Crimes Unit, and, through a particularly ruthless backdoor, the Chinese government officials Kang was trying to partner with. The Chinese did not appreciate discovering that their potential business partner was a fraud. The partnership collapsed within hours. The Financial Times broke the story on a Wednesday morning. Kang Industries coup. Former CEO Choi Sung-ho releases evidence of decade-long fraud, corruption, and embezzlement by current chairman Kang Jae-won. The article was devastating. Detailed. Irrefutable. Within the first hour, Kang Industries stock dropped 41%. By noon, the Korean prosecutor's office had issued a warrant for Kang Jae-won's arrest. By evening, Sung-ho's frozen accounts had been unfrozen by court order, and his shares, 43% of the company, were back under his control. In the safe house in Ype, Amora and Sung-ho watched the news on his laptop. Korean anchors spoke in rapid, urgent tones. Ticker tapes scrolled stock collapses. Legal analysts predicted criminal charges that would take years to resolve. "It's over," Amora said. "No," Sung-ho said. "Not yet." Kang Jae-won did not go quietly. 2 days after the Financial Times story, he appeared at the Ype compound. Alone. No security, no lawyers. Just an old man in a creased suit, standing at the gate in the Nigerian sun, sweating through his composure. Sung-ho let him in. Amora stood at his side. The uncle looked at them. Looked at the woman standing next to his nephew. Tall, dark, regal, with a collarbone tattoo that looked like war paint. "You found someone," Kang said to Sung-ho in English. A courtesy for Amora's benefit. Or perhaps a weapon, making sure she heard everything. "I found her," Sung-ho said. "And she helped you destroy me." "You destroyed yourself. I simply provided the evidence." Kang's face tightened. "You think this is justice? I built that company as much as your father did. I gave my life to it. You stole it. From me. From the employees. From the legacy my father built. Your father was a dock worker with ambitions beyond his station. I gave him legitimacy. I gave him the Kang name. And you took it back by framing his son." The silence was thick. Heavy. The mango trees didn't move. Kang turned to Amora. Studied her with the cold appraisal of a man who viewed women as variables in equations. "You know what he is," Kang said. "What he's capable of. He destroyed me without hesitation. You think he won't do the same to you?" Amora stepped forward. The thorned crown on her collarbone caught the light. "I've already been destroyed by someone I trusted," she said. "I survived. And the man I married is not the one who did the destroying. You are." Kang's composure cracked. Just slightly. Just enough to reveal the fear beneath. "The prosecutors are waiting for you at the airport," Sung-ho said. "I've arranged for a voluntary surrender. It will look better in court. You would send your own uncle to prison. You sent your own nephew into exile." The two men stared at each other. The weight of blood and betrayal and decades of family corruption pressed between them like geological strata. "Your father would be ashamed," Kang said. "My father would have done this sooner." Kang Jae-won left. The gate closed behind him. A car waited on the road. Sung-ho had arranged that too. Every detail. Every contingency. The mind of a king who'd spent 2 years in exile learning patience. When the car was gone, Sung-ho's shoulders dropped. The tension he'd been carrying, not for hours or days, but for years, finally released. He exhaled, and the sound was ragged. Human. Broken and healing in the same breath. Amora took his hand. Held it. They stood among the mango trees and breathed. They returned to Lagos. The world had changed in their absence. The story of Choi Sung-ho, the hidden billionaire who'd lived as a caterer, married a Nigerian fashion mogul, and toppled his corrupt uncle from exile, dominated international headlines for weeks. The King in Hiding. How Choi Sung-ho brought down a corporate empire from a Lagos kitchen. Amora Okoye, the woman behind the takedown of Kang Industries. Love, betrayal, and billions. The true story of the century. Amora read the headlines with a detachment born of exhaustion. The public narrative was compelling but incomplete. It captured the power and the scandal but missed the truth, the quiet mornings. The borica. The conversations on the kitchen floor. The moment a woman who'd sworn never to trust again chose to trust the most unlikely man in the world. Deo tried one more time. He showed up at Okoye Design's flagship store on a Saturday afternoon. Amora was overseeing a new collection installation. Fabrics draped like liquid fire across mannequins positioned in the window display. The thorned crown motif appeared throughout, embroidered on collars, printed on silk, stitched into hemlines. A collection born from pain and transformed into art. Amora. She turned. Deo looked diminished. The charm was still there, but it had curdled, the smile of a man who'd realized too late what he'd lost. Your husband, he said. He's all over the news. A billionaire. A king. He's a man, Amora said. That's what matters. You're telling me you didn't know. When you married him at the courthouse, you didn't know who he was. I knew exactly who he was. A stranger who said yes when no one else would. Deo's jaw worked. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. You made a choice. So did I. Chidera meant nothing. Chidera meant everything. She was my person. And you took her from me. Not the other way around. You didn't just cheat on me, Deo. You stole my best friend. You weaponized the person I trusted most against me. That's not a mistake. That's cruelty. He flinched. For the first time, she saw him truly hear her. Not defending, not deflecting, hearing. I'm sorry, he said. And for once, it sounded real. I believe you, she said. And it changes nothing. Goodbye, Deo. He left. She returned to her fabrics. And the chapter closed. 3 months after the scandal broke, on a Sunday morning that smelled of rain and frangipani, Amora and Sung Ho stood in the garden of the Eep compound and got married again. Not at a courthouse. Not for cameras. Not for revenge or strategy or performance. For real. The guest list was 7 people. Amora's older sister Ngozi, who'd flown in from London. Sung Ho's former chief of staff, Park Jin-soo, the only person from his previous life he still trusted. Amora's head seamstress, Mrs. Balogun, who'd been with the company since the beginning. And 4 staff members from the compound who had become, in the strange alchemy of crisis and proximity, something like family. Amora wore white. A gown she'd designed herself, simple, structural, with thorns embroidered along the collarbone in gold thread. Her tattoo was visible, as always. But now it looked different. Not like armor. Like a memorial. A marker of what she'd survived on the way to where she stood. Sung Ho wore a black suit that fit him properly for the first time since she'd known him. The transformation was subtle but startling. The way proper tailoring revealed what borrowed clothes had hidden. The breadth of his shoulders. The quiet authority of his frame. He looked like what he was, a man of immense power who chose gentleness. There were no elaborate vows. Just truths. I married you the first time because I was angry, Amora said. I marry you now because you showed me that anger and love can exist in the same heart. You saw me when I was broken and you didn't try to fix me. You just stayed. And staying, in my life, in my world, that's the bravest thing anyone has ever done for me. Sung Ho took her hands. The scar on his forearm pressed against her wrist tattoo. Thorn meeting thorn. I spent 2 years being no one, he said. You made me someone. Not the CEO. Not the heir. Not the name on a building. Someone. A man who makes borica in the morning and burns plantain at dinner and argues about furniture placement with a woman who is smarter and stronger and more stubborn than anyone I've ever met. Amora laughed. Tears streamed down her face. I love you, he said. Not the performance. Not the strategy. You. The woman on the kitchen floor at midnight. The woman who told a billionaire's uncle to his face that she'd already survived worse. The woman who chose me before she knew what I was worth. That's the only currency I recognize. She kissed him. Softly. Slowly. With the deliberate tenderness of a woman who had learned that love, real love, was not a performance but a practice. Daily, imperfect, terrifying, and sacred. The 7 guests clapped. Mrs. Balogun wept openly. Park Jin-soo, a man of legendary Korean composure, cleared his throat repeatedly. The rain came that afternoon, sudden and warm, and they danced in it, the fashion queen and the hidden king, barefoot in the garden while the mango trees swayed. 6 months later, Kang Industries was restructured. Sung-ho returned to Seoul, not as the exiled CEO but as majority shareholder and board chairman, operating remotely from Lagos. He dismantled the corruption networks his uncle had built, replaced compromised executives, redirected the company toward clean energy, technology infrastructure, and, at Amora's suggestion, African textile manufacturing partnerships. Kang Jae-won was convicted on 47 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and corruption. He received a 12-year sentence. He did not look at Sung-ho during the verdict. Sung-ho did not attend the sentencing. Some justice required presence. Some required distance. Okoye designs expanded internationally. The Thorned Crown collection, inspired by Amora's tattoo and the journey that gave it meaning, debuted at Paris Fashion Week and received a standing ovation. Vogue called it the most emotionally intelligent collection in a decade. Amora and Sung-ho split their time between Lagos and Seoul. In Lagos, she was the queen of Nigerian fashion. In Seoul, he was the quiet chairman who ran a $47 billion company from an office with no nameplate. Together, they built a foundation for displaced workers, an homage to the years Sung-ho had spent among them. They argued about furniture, about whose cuisine was superior, about whether Borika qualified as a meal. It did not, Amora insisted, no matter how many times he served it with nothing else. They were imperfect. They were difficult. They were exactly what the other needed. 1 year after the second wedding, on a quiet evening in the Eep compound, Sung-ho sat in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that Lagos hoarded for itself, amber and violet and the deep, burning red of West African earth. Amora found him there. She wore a simple dress. Her collarbone tattoo caught the dying light. She sat beside him on the stone bench and leaned her head against his shoulder. "I have something for you," she said. She took his hand, turned his forearm over, pressed her finger against the scar that ran from wrist to elbow. "I want to cover this," she said. "Not erase it. Cover it. With something that means you survived." He looked at her. "A tattoo. A thorn. One thorn. To match mine." He was quiet for a long time. The sunset deepened. The birds settled. The ocean, unseen but ever present, murmured its ancient patience. "A crown," he said. "What?" "Not a thorn. A crown. To match yours. Because you are what I survived for." She turned his face toward hers. Studied him, the calm eyes, the sharp jaw, the mouth that rarely smiled but, when it did, made the world stop. "I love you," she said. "I know," he said. She kissed him. Soft. Sure. The kind of kiss that wasn't a beginning or an end but a continuation. Of a story that began in pain and arrived, improbably, impossibly, inevitably, at something that looked remarkably like peace. The sun set. The garden darkened. And two people who had been broken by the world found, in each other, the only thing worth being whole for. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with love. They begin with pain. With betrayal. With a desperate decision made in a moment of rage. And somewhere between the lie and the truth, between the performance and the reality, between the broken queen and the hidden king, love shows up. Not polished. Not perfect. But real. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, the person you need most might be the person you almost overlooked.